If you want to speak with advanced English grammar, you have to know these 100 important advanced English grammar points, the ones listed here. Starting with this one, it or this. Imagine you have this sentence, I bought a new car, and you want to follow on with another sentence. It was a shiny red car. Now, why did I use it here and not this? Because it refers to nouns. It is a replacement for a new car. But in the second sentence, I use this. This was something I had dreamed of doing. Now, why this and not it? It's because this refers to ideas, which could be a whole sentence. This does not mean a new car. This refers to all of the sentence. I bought a new car and this was something I had dreamed of doing. I had dreamed of buying a new car. So use this when you refer to ideas, it when you refer to nouns. Also, you need to understand complementation. The most basic form of complementation is where we have subject, verb, object. But we can also have ditransitives and complex transitives. Ditransitives is where you have a direct object and an indirect object. The direct object receives the action. For example, in we told them a story about the train. What did we tell? A story. The story receives the action. It's the direct object. The indirect object is affected by the direct object. Who did we tell a story to? Them. But if we switch the order around, we have to have to before the indirect object. We told a story to them. We could also have complex transitives, where you have a complement that describes the object. We saw the train leave. What left? The train. And you could also use copular verbs, subject, verb, complement. I am tall. You also need to know about using must for emphasis. It must be mentioned that we are making great efforts to establish peace. Now, why did we not just say we are making great efforts to establish peace? Because we wanted to make it absolutely clear that this is something important. So we add must for emphasis. It must be mentioned. It must be said. It's a structure that we often put in front of sentences to make the importance stand out. Next, fronting. Here's a typical sentence. Pick up the first book you see, and then another sentence, we could read the other books later. But let's say I want to emphasize the other books. If I'm doing that in speech, not in writing, then I can put the other books at the front. The other books we can read later. It puts the other books at the front of your mind. It gives them importance, and this is called fronting. Another important rule is to do with the use of noun phrases. To speak or write with advanced English grammar, you have to use noun phrases well. Look at the part in red here. This is the first British car that can travel 400 metres on one charge. Now, the part in red is actually all one noun. It's a noun phrase. We have the main noun car and then other things that describe it. Before the main noun, we can have the article, the determiner, and the adjective. And then afterwards, we can have the relative clause or a prepositional phrase. And we can have as many prepositional phrases attached to the main noun as you like. You need to know how to use the passive in all its various ways. And one way is to use it with get instead of the verb to be. I got given a special present. Normally the passive would be I was given a special present. But got emphasises the activity more. It focuses us on the fact that something really happened in an active way. Make sure you know about omission with relative pronouns, and this is the first part of the lesson that deals with that. We have more coming later as well. Here we're focusing on relative pronoun followed by the verb to be. When a relative clause starts with relative pronoun and then the verb to be, we can omit them when a participle and other words following come next. So let's start off with the full form. I saw a train that was approaching the station. Well, we can shorten that to I saw a train approaching the station with no change in meaning because of the rules of omission. What about need? Well, need is interesting when we use it with not. Need not means there's no requirement. You need not watch this video to the end. But my suggestion is you need to not turn off because you need to learn all of the lessons in this video. And when I say need to not, that's a requirement not to do something. Pre-modifying imperatives are formed with do, just and please. Look at these pairs. I start off with a typical imperative, wake up. It's a verb giving an order. But I can modify this with do wake up. And this means I really want you to wake up. Or get up. I can modify this with just get up. I would normally say this if I'm getting impatient. Just means this is the only thing you need to do, but we can add it before an imperative. Also, please, that's the nicer pre-modifying word for imperatives. Leave your room, please leave your room. Do you know what a present participle phrase is? Can you spot it in this sentence? Knowing that she had already done enough to pass, she didn't try so hard for the final paper. Present participle phrases can describe an action by a noun, that's usually the subject, or state reasons for an action by a noun. Can you spot it now? The part in bold at the beginning is the present participle phrase. It has the verb know in its ing form, and that's the present participle. Knowing that she had done enough to pass, well, who knew enough? Well, it was she. So the present participle phrase here is describing the subject. It's telling us reasons why the subject did that action. And there are other reasons we can use the present participle phrase as well. It provides more information about a noun. It gives results of an action. It's a phrase, not a clause, because knowing never changes for tense. We don't say know, knows, knowed, knowing. In this case, it will always stay knowing, or it could potentially be a past participle, but it will never be in the present simple form. It won't change depending upon who the subject is. Would for hedging. Hedging is when you're trying to be cautious with your language. You want to be careful not to claim something too strongly in case you're not right. We often do this in academic writing. Look at the difference between these two. This study believes that the world is getting busier. This states an idea quite clearly. But if you want to hedge it slightly and not be too strong with your claim, you can add would. This study would believe that the world is getting busier. If is usually not followed by will in the same clause. It normally goes in the second clause, but you can add it in the first clause in a sentence like this. If it will help you to be on time, I will give you a lift. Do you notice the slight difference here? Turn it around. I will give you a lift if it will help you be on time. The lift is designed to help the outcome. So, what does that mean? The first clause here is a condition of the second clause. I'll only give you a lift, but there's something necessary here. And what's necessary is in the clause with if it will help you be on time. So we add will to the first clause when that is actually the condition of the second clause. Now, I'm going through these important rules really quickly, but if you're serious about improving your English grammar and reaching an advanced level, C1 or C2, then try my course. There's a link in the description below this video. Now, we don't often think of dare as being a modal, and when it's in normal sentence form, it's not. But when it's a negative or a question, it becomes like a modal. So in sentence form, he dared his friend to jump into the sea. Typical rules are followed. Dare is a verb, and if you want to follow it with another verb, you have to add to plus infinitive, which many verbs do. But in the negative form, the to disappears. He daren't jump into the sea. And also in the question form, dare he jump into the sea? Dare can start the question on its own. no need to use do before the verb. Another advanced feature of English is when we use the present tense for all kinds of other slight minor features, such as annoyance. You always arrive home late. You are always arriving home late. So we use the present tense with adverbs of frequency, like always, to show that we are annoyed about something that's going on, something that happens repeatedly. Make sure you know that you can use articles in a different way when it is in a copular verb format. Normally, when we have the second mention of a noun, we switch from a or an to the. For example, in the first sentence, I saw a star, the star was bright. So a with the first mention, the with the second. But in the second set of sentences, we have something different. I saw a star, it was a bright star. We have a again as the second mention. Why? Because it's in the form subject-verb complement. We're using a copular verb here. It was a bright star. Here, a bright star describes it. It has that format of complement describing the subject itself. And in this form, we don't necessarily use the for the second mention. One is an interesting word. It comes from old-fashioned English, but we still use it in some situations. And often if we want to refer to all people, we'll use one instead, such as in this example. Sydney is surprising. One might be amazed to find so much to do by the river. And one simply means all people. All people might be amazed. Conditions with modals are very varied indeed. We often think that you have to use will or would in the second clause, but that's not true. You can use all the range of modals in the second clause. Here are just some examples. If we run as fast as possible, we might catch the train. It's different to will. Will has certainty about the outcome that comes about if the condition in the first clause is met. Here, might says it's just a possible outcome, not a certain outcome. If we say this, if you want to catch the train, you must run fast, then there is a necessity in the word must. Or if we don't stop, we could catch the train. Another way of introducing possibility. So all of these modals create different variances in meaning in conditionals, and they're all possible. Next, should have. We can use should have in this way when we're discussing past ideas and when something went wrong with those ideas. I should have gone means I didn't go, but that was the wrong idea. But I shouldn't have gone means I did go. That was also the wrong idea. Make sure you know how to create emphasis with present tenses. We often do this with do and the verb to be. With the present simple, add do to add emphasis to your sentence. Instead of saying, I think we can make a good impression, say, I do think we can make a good impression. And that adds emphasis to think. Or with the continuous form, instead of just having I'm painting the wall or having the verb to be that's not stressed, stress the verb to be. I am painting the wall. It really is happening. Articles with places can be confusing because usually we would expect to use a or the before a place, such as I'm at the museum, she's in the supermarket, or even she's in a supermarket. But when the activity is more important than the place, we don't add the article. So words such as school, church, or even just bed. I'm at school, not I'm at the school. When I say I'm at school, I'm focusing on the fact I'm studying in a school. You can say I'm at the school, but then you would be referring to the place specifically, not what happens there. Or you could say she's in bed. She's in bed means she's sleeping. If you say she's in the bed, then what you mean is there's one bed in the house and she's in that one. Determiners can go before of with a certain structure. Look at these. I want to hear more of their music. More is a determiner of, and then their music is a definite noun phrase because there is definite for the music. It turns the music into something more specific. And that's a phrase we often have. Determiner of, and then their music. Determiner followed by a noun. The first conditional normally goes with the present tense, but we can use the past simple. Look at this. If the factory didn't use high quality materials when making your shirt, it will wear out quickly. Notice didn't use is in the past tense. If using a past situation to describe a likely future consequence, it is possible to use the past tense in the if clause. So here we are speculating about something in the past and we don't know what happened. So we're imagining if this past situation was true, which we don't know about, then that would lead to the future consequence. Make sure you know about ought not as well. The negative of ought not is ought not to or ought not. You could use either. You ought not tell anyone, you ought not to tell anyone. Both are acceptable. Why would you use the past simple instead of the past continuous? There are many reasons, but here's one fundamental reason. The past simple progresses time, but the past continuous freezes time. It stops time moving. And you'll see this in the examples here. First of all, the past simple. I left the bank at 4 p.m. I caught the bus at 4:10 p.m. I arrived home at 5 p.m. The past simple allows progression of time here. But with the past continuous, I arrived home at 5 p.m. The children were playing in the garden. The sun was still shining. So playing in the garden and still shining happens at the same time as arriving home. All of those events happen at the same time because the past continuous does not progress time. Now, you may say, well, it's only because I put time phrases into the first example. Well, let's imagine they're not there. I left the bank, I caught the bus, I arrived home. That's absolutely fine, and we know that they don't happen at the same time. We know if we hear that you left the bank first, then caught the bus second, and then arrived home third. So the past simple progresses time whether we tell you what the time is or not. Adjectives can go before the article in certain situations. They usually don't. Usually we have adjective after an article and then the noun afterwards, such as a beautiful boy. The article, beautiful the adjective, boy the noun. But in certain structures, that's not the case. For example, here with as. I'm not as clever a student as my brother. I'm not so tall a man as my father. So in these comparative structures, we have as or so, followed by an adjective, and then article followed by the noun. So the rules get switched here in this comparative form as, or so as. And let's look at as clauses a little bit more. I'm now coming to the main part of the speech. As mentioned, it will last around 10 minutes. As can introduce verbs which still take tense, and it makes a clause all of its own that's like an adverb clause going at the beginning or end of a sentence, but the verb still takes time. I could have said as has been mentioned, as will be mentioned. So we have this interesting clause. What does it mean? It means this is something that was mentioned before. As mentioned, this is something that was mentioned before. It will last around 10 minutes. But I summarise all of that as an as clause. As mentioned, it will last around 10 minutes. Were to does something different to a second conditional clause in English because it introduces something that is definitely future. When we use the normal second conditional, it could be present or future. But with were to, it pushes it into the future. If you were to jump out of a plane, your parents would be terrified. Were to means a hypothetical situation, but after now, clearly after now. Other second conditional forms can mean the present or the future, but word to pushes it into the future. Here's would again. We have lots of would in this video because would is one of the advanced features of English. And we can use would to comment on something as if it is you. Look at this short dialogue. The dinner is burnt. I would have turned the oven on later. I would cook another meal. So would here has the effect of saying, this is my position. I'm imagining that I'm you, and I'm telling you what I would do if I was in your position. So would is very common for doing this. If you're using more than one adjective before a noun, you need to know the order that they follow. You can't just have a random order. You have to follow this order. Now, you don't have to have all of these as one, but imagine you have 2 or 3 adjectives. Well, look at what type of adjective they are on this list and then put them in order according to it. First would be an adjective of opinion, then size, then physical quality, the age of the adjective, the shape, colour, origin, material, and then if an adjective is an adjective telling you the purpose of something, that would come last. Make sure you know about ellipted subordinates. What do I mean by this? Well, compare the 2 sentences together. Here's one way of saying it. When the crew were asked to leave the boat, they refused. Look at the difference in the next one though. When asked to leave the boat, the crew refused. We could even have just said they refused. What's happened here? Well, the subject in both clauses is the same. So we can leave out the subject and the verb to be in the passive form and simply have when followed by the past participle, and it has no meaning change at all because the subject in both parts are the same. The third conditional is normally made of if and the past perfect with would have and the past participle in the second clause. But if you use would be, then that makes a change. Normally the past perfect in the third conditional makes it refer to a past situation that you wish could have been different, and you're imagining how the past would have been different if something was changed about the past. But if you say would be, then you're imagining how the future could be different if something in the past had changed. If I had studied harder, past perfect, the past situation, I would be studying at a higher level. Would be means that now or in the future I could study at a higher level, not the past. Here's would again. Would is really important for establishing politeness in English. Politeness can be created in English through moving backwards in time, using hypothetical language, and avoiding questions using statements instead. They're all techniques of language to make language feel less direct and threatening and pressing for the listener. And would is excellent because it can meet all of those criteria. Will you turn the music down can sound a bit direct, so change it to would you turn the music down. Would is sometimes a past of will, but it's also hypothetical too. Then we can switch it into a sentence form. I would be grateful if you turned the music down. And this is much more polite than saying, will you turn the music down? Should you use the present perfect simple or the present perfect continuous? Well, it's the difference between focusing on something being permanent or the focus on something being temporary. If you say, I have lived in London, then that means that something more permanent happened in the past up until now. But if you say, I have been living in London, then you're suggesting that this was a temporary situation, not a permanent one. Ed and ing as adjectives have to be handled carefully, otherwise you get problems. Read these examples. I am boring, I am bored. If you say I am boring, it means I make others bored. Me personally, I'm a boring person. I make other people feel bored. Really what you mean to say is I am bored. Something has happened to make me feel bored. Don't get them wrong or it could be embarrassing. What's a fixed modifier? Well, sometimes there is a set adjective that always goes with a particular noun. Phrases such as bone dry. All that does is to emphasise the fact that it's dry. When we say bone dry, we mean it's very, very dry. If it's rock hard, we mean it's very, very hard. If you're wide awake, you're very awake. And if it's stone cold, it's really, really cold. And sometimes we can mix these up into as phrases. As dry as a bone, here we've switched the order. Noun first, then the adjective. As dry as a bone, very dry. As white as snow, very white. In conditionals, we can sometimes use inversion rather than standard form. In the first conditional, instead of saying, if I find your keys, we can say, should I find your keys? In the second conditional, instead of saying, if you were taller, we could say, were you taller? Or in the third conditional, instead of saying, if you had looked more carefully, you could say, had you looked carefully? The past perfect is an advanced feature of English tenses, and we use it to make it clear events are out of order in time. For example, this man, I came home with sunburn on my head. I had left my hat at home. The events are out of order. When did he leave his hat at home? Before he got the sunburn. So to show that one thing happened before another, but the order of events is wrong, use the past perfect. If the order of events was correct, then often the past simple will be fine. As is often used for comparison, but be careful how you use it. For equal comparison, use as adjective as. I am as tall as you. That means there's an equal amount. I'm this height and you're the same height. For negative comparison, use not. I am not as tall as you. That means I am shorter than you. It doesn't mean I'm taller. But if you use not followed by the comparative, then it could mean that you are the same height or that you're lower in height. I am not taller than you doesn't mean necessarily I'm shorter. I could be the same. Adjuncts followed by verbs look like this. At the bus stop stood a lady waiting for the bus. We have this sentence form where we can use these adjuncts, these phrases that look like adverbials. But we can add them and then we can have a verb straight afterwards. Without having the subject, it's almost as if the sentence has been turned upside down. It should really mean a lady stood waiting for the bus. But we have this structure, adjunct followed by verb. It allows us to introduce an extra little bit of observation to the rest of the sentence. We could have just said a lady waiting for the bus, but we wanted to add something else. At the bus stop stood. What was that? A lady waiting for the bus. If only can be used in a number of different ways to talk about wishes, but the way we follow if only affects the time that we're describing. If only with past tense clause means a desire for something to be different in the present. If only the weather were better. If only with a clause with would, if only it would stop raining. Well, this is a desire for something to be different in the future. And if only with the past perfect, if only it had been a sunny day yesterday, well, this is a desire for something to be different in the past. We're looking back to the past and wishing the outcome of something was different to the reality. We can use would as a reason not to do things. I would have loved to visit you tomorrow, but I don't have a car at the moment. Would tells the reason why. A A specific use of the past perfect is when we're talking about our intentions, often when the intentions were there and now in the present something's different. What are you doing next week? Well, I had planned to visit you, but my car still hasn't been fixed. Well, notice here that we compare the past perfect and then go straight to the present. And we can do that when we're using past perfect for intentions. We can use the past perfect for intentions even if the outcome is something that's present or future. A lot of adverbs and adjectives have exactly the same form. And don't get confused when you see them, because they could be an adverb or an adjective. You'll have to check the position in the sentence. Fast, slow, early, late, low, high and hard are examples of these. An appositive phrase is where you introduce extra information about something as a noun phrase simply inserted next to the noun you're describing with commas. Josephine, comma, an excellent student from England. I added excellent, that's not really there. Let's start again. Josephine, a student from England, is an excellent pianist. A student from England simply describes Josephine a little bit more. It's an appositive phrase. It's simply a noun phrase inserted with commas that describes the noun more. Those who. This is really useful to mean the people who. So the gates open at 9 a.m. Those who arrive late will not be allowed in. And it simply means the people who. Would appears again. We can use would for repeated past actions. Manuel is 2 years old. When he was a baby, he would suck his thumb every day. So repeated past actions, not repeated past states. You'd have to use used to or the past simple for that. Future perfect for anticipation. The future perfect is will have followed by the past participle. And we normally use it when we're talking about something that will happen before a future time. But we can also use it when we're anticipating what people will think in the present. If I say, I imagine you will have noticed my new haircut, what I mean is up to now. I imagine between the past and now, this is something that happened. You noticed it. Adjectives can sometimes have a meaning change when they change position in the sentence, such as certain. A certain person entered, that means a particular or specific person, but I am absolutely certain means I have no doubt. Do is such a useful word and we can use it as a substitute in many different ways. I expect you'll go to bed soon. When you do so, I will go to bed too. So do so means when you perform this activity. Or, shall I wake him up? Don't do it. Let her sleep. Don't perform that activity. Or, I'm going to bed now. You should do the same. So when you copy an activity, do the same. Modals of negative deduction are sometimes surprising because we may think that you should use mustn't. Instead, we use can't. For example, the film lasted 4 hours, but you say, that can't be true. I saw the audience leaving after 3 hours. So this is negative deduction of certainty. You're certain that this is not true because of the evidence you have. Okay, we're halfway through. Do you know about using much as a subject? We usually don't use much as a subject. You're likely to find it in sentences such as, I don't have much money. But you can use it at the beginning in sentences like this. Much is known about the history of ancient Egypt. What's happened here? Notice we're using the passive form afterwards, is known. Negative inversion is where we invert the sentence using a negative word at the beginning. Very common with never. You could say, I didn't expect that to happen. Or invert it. Never did I. So we have never and then we invert did and I. Instead of I didn't, did I. Never did I expect that to happen. And we can use that with a whole range of negative sounding words that come at the start of the sentence. Do you use to or enough? This often confuses. Well, to comes before a determiner or an adjective. For example, it's too hot. But enough can come at the end or before the noun it describes. So it's not hot enough. Here we have hot as the adjective and then enough afterwards. But when we have the noun, enough goes before it. I don't have enough ice. Dummy subjects is something that's often used in English. Look at this. It is amazing how your children have grown. The sentence is really just your children have grown, and you want to add a comment about it being amazing, about your children have grown being amazing. So we can do that by simply adding amazing at the beginning of the sentence. But we can't say amazing, your children have grown. We need to have a proper clause. So we introduce it is with it being a dummy subject. It doesn't mean anything. It just enables us to put amazing into the sentence. The situation is amazing. In other words, it is amazing how your children have grown. There's a small difference between cannot when it's all one word and cannot when it's separated. You cannot enter, all one word, is an obligation. But when we have you can not choose to take the challenge if you wish, then that means you have the ability to decide not to. Make sure you understand how and when you could use the passive. You can use it with transitive verbs, but not intransitive. So I played a game can become a game was played by me, but I cried yesterday cannot become yesterday was cried by me, because I cried is intransitive. Will have to is a phrase that we use for future necessity. My son broke the window. We will have to pay for it. It's necessary in the future to do this. We don't say we will must. As well as adjective order, there's also adverb order. If you need to use more than one adverb in a row together, follow this order: manner, place and time. For example, we slept peacefully there last night. Peacefully is manner, there is place, last night is time. What do we mean by preposition stranding? Well, sometimes the preposition can move in a sentence so it's not close to the word it refers to. Let's start with I'm going to a wedding. Now, when the focus of the question is on the preposition, do this. What type of car are you travelling in? So in is important here because what we mean is the method of travel. But we can switch the order completely in the question and also do this. In what type of car are you travelling? So in goes to the start of the sentence because that's what's important here. And in the response, we can also have in at the end. I need a car to go in. What do we do if we want to talk about deduction in the present or the future in general situations? Well, normally we'll use a modal and then the verb to be. Everyone has an umbrella outside. What does that make us think? Well, it makes us think it could be raining. Modal followed by to be and then the activity raining. The passive is normally followed with by when you have the subject, but it doesn't always have to be the same. Sometimes we could use with to talk about something that was used. I was hit with a stick. In other words, they used a stick to hit me. We could also use through, and that means the way the act reached me. I was contacted, how? Through a mediator. All of the act happened because a mediator contacted me. A mediator was the way that it reached me. Or with certain verbs we use of, such as I was scared of the dark when I was younger. Back to would again. Would is used for something called future in the past. Look at these two sentences. They got married last year on a Saturday. They would go on a honeymoon the next day for 2 weeks. So the time of the story is they got married on a Saturday. And when we use would, then we're looking forward from that moment. If you were at that moment on the Saturday, then the next thing in the future would be the honeymoon the next day. We call it future in the past. When we intensify modals, that often leads to a word order change. Normally, adverbs would follow modals. You must always wash your hands before eating. But if we are using this adverb to intensify the modal, put it before. You really must wash your hands. So I'm intensifying the word must itself. How can be used in a sentence as an exclamative, particularly when it's in speech. So let's start with this sentence. I wish I was on holiday. We'll make it more exclamatory by using how. How I wish I was on holiday. We've looked at present and future deduction. What about past deduction? Well, again, we use modals and then have followed by the past participle. And this works with most modals, not all, but most. In this case, it couldn't have been raining. It's dry outside. Couldn't is the modal, then have, and then the past participle been. Let's look at what happens with the passives when phrases follow them. Let's focus on the words in red and italics first. I cut the grass in the field. Let's make that passive. The grass in the field was cut by me. So here, in the field stays with grass. Why? Because here, in the field describes the grass. The phrase describes the object. It's telling us more about what the grass is. Only the grass in this field. And when the phrase describes the object, it must stay next to the object when it moves in the passive form. Now, of course, we could look at this in two different ways. If we are describing or defining the grass, then we would say the grass in the field and keep it all together. But if in the field describes the cutting, then that would go into the blue part. And that is if a phrase describes the sentence, it does not move with the object in the passive form. Let's use a more clear example. I cut the grass with a lawnmower. Here, a lawnmower does not define the grass. It can't possibly be grass. A lawnmower defines how it was cut. So here, keep them apart. The grass was cut with a lawnmower. Similarly, if you mean that the grass was cut in the field, and in the field refers to the place where it was cut, then you could do the same thing. The grass was cut in the field, rather than the grass in the field was cut. Only put in the field with grass if in the field is actually defining the grass you're talking about. Was going to is another way of speaking about the future in the past, but with a difference. Here it's to do with unfulfilled past plans. Look at the example. I was going to pay to fix the window, but I discovered someone else had already paid for it. So here was going to was anticipating the future from a past point, but the plan didn't happen because of something else. Yet can be used as an adverb or as a conjunction. As an adverb, it usually goes at the end of a clause. I haven't started yet. But as a conjunction, it usually goes at the front of the clause. I tried to move the car, yet it wouldn't move. The present simple is often used for formal correspondence. I write to inform you that you are invited to the King's special dinner next month. Often in letter writing, we wouldn't say I write, we'd say I am writing. But to make it more formal, change it to I write. When do we use could? When do we use was able to? We can use both for general past ability. I could swim 100 metres when I was younger. That's something I could do generally in the past. But if we're referring to one specific event, use was able to and not could. I was able to swim 100 metres this morning. Don't say I could swim 100 metres this morning, because that's a specific moment of ability, not general. The passive with two clauses and the same subject means that we can leave some words out again. It's a common theme with the passive, where we can leave words out in certain situations. Look at the first example and then compare with the second. The cat was put outside of the house and the cat was fed in the shed. Well, we've got the cat twice, and they're both in the passive. So the second passive can be omitted because we are mirroring with the first one. The cat was put outside of the house and fed in the shed. The subjunctive is not commonly used in English nowadays, but it can be used in two situations. We can use it as the past subjunctive in hypothetical, particularly second conditional sentences. If he were able to start the course in September, he would. So instead of saying he was, we just use were. Or we can use the present subjunctive when we just want to show importance. It is expected that he be on time for the start of the lesson. So be here is the subjunctive and it's showing importance of the situation, but it's considered to be quite formal. Do you use hard or hardly? Hardly means not many or not much or not long. I have hardly any more hair. Hard, on the other hand, means high effort required or solid or strong. I am trying hard to keep fit. It means I'm putting a lot of effort in. What's the difference between get used to and be used to? Well, be used to means familiar with. Get used to means become familiar with. So if you say, I am used to Windows 11, Windows 10, I don't mean the windows on the wall here. That means I am familiar. It's familiar to me. I know it. I'm comfortable with it. But if you say I am getting used to Windows, it means I'm in the process of becoming familiar with Windows. Now back to was able to and could. Because it's not the end of the story. What about with the negative form? I couldn't swim 200 metres this morning. Well, isn't that specific past inability? Well, yes it is. But in the negative form, it's okay to use couldn't as well as wasn't. You can do interesting things with non-defining passive clauses. Look at what happens here. My dinner, which was made by my mother, was delicious. Which was made is a non-defining passive clause. But I can shorten it and move it to the front of the sentence. Made by my mother, my dinner was delicious. What is an ergative verb? Well, an ergative verb is one that is transitive when the subject does the activity, but intransitive when the subject receives the activity. One such verb is moved. I moved the chair. This is transitive because there's an object afterwards. Here, I do the activity. But in the second one, the chair has to receive the activity because a chair can't move itself. The chair moved, probably because someone else did it. Here there is no object. Do we use late or lately? Late means after the expected time. Lately means in recent time before now. I'm so sorry I will arrive late after the expected time. I have been feeling tired lately. Before now. Cleft sentences add something at the beginning of a sentence which adds emphasis to an aspect of the sentence. Instead of saying, I stole some sweets from the cupboard, I could say, the truth is that I stole some sweets from the cupboard. So the is often used to begin a cleft sentence. But we can also use a WH word, there and it. What happened is that I stole some sweets from the cupboard. There is truth in the story that I stole some sweets from the cupboard. It is true that I stole some sweets from the cupboard. So all of these extra cleft sentences add some extra aspect. Most of these are saying, this is definitely true. One of them emphasises the activity that happened. What happened is. May well and may as well are completely different. May well means something is very possible. It's a positive way of looking at possibility. I may well win the marathon. I believe there's a good chance. But may as well means do this because the original plan is not going to succeed. I won't win the marathon, so I may as well give up. The original plan won't succeed, so let's do something instead. At and in are often considered quite basic, but there are some differences that some people are not aware of. For example, at is used for when you're somewhere around a fixed location, and in is for places within the boundaries of a fixed location. So if you say, I'm at the station, you might be inside, but you just might be near. If you say, I'm in the station, then you're not outside. What is a delexical verb? A delexical verb is a verb that allows the activity to shift onto the object. Look at the two different examples here. He swam to the side of the pool. This is a normal verb. Swam describes the activity. But in the next one, after he had a shower, had is not the activity, it's shower. And so have can be a delexical verb because the activity comes from the object. The historical present is what we use to make a story seem more real and current to the listener. Instead of telling it in the past tense, we switch to the present tenses, so it has that more real and current feeling. It allows the listener to think they're there. This is what happened. I go to the gate and the dog bit me. I'm retelling the story as if it was now for you. May or might can be used when we are accepting that something is true. Do you think that ships are difficult to travel in during a storm? Well, that may be the case. I accept that as true, but I still prefer them to planes. Sometimes we use different prepositions with vehicles. We use in for vehicles where you don't move around, such as I'm in a car, but on for vehicles where you can move around, such as I'm on a train. The causative is used when something happens because the subject arranged it. In other words, the subject doesn't do the activity. The subject arranges for some other way for it to happen. We often do this with made, let, get and have. He made me do it. I let her do it. I got someone to do the job for me. I had someone do the job for me. In all of these examples, the subject didn't actually do the activity. It caused something else to happen instead, and that's why it's the causative. State verbs normally don't take the active form. They don't take the continuous form. They normally only appear in the simple form. Be, have and see are examples, but sometimes there are exceptions. For present behaviour, be can take the continuous form. You're being silly. For experiences, have can take the continuous form. I'm having a great time. And sometimes when we're talking about relationships, instead of see, I'm seeing a friend later, which really means meeting. May can be used for wishes, good or bad. May you enjoy good health is wishing good health on someone, but may you get what you deserve is probably wishing something bad on someone. Prepositions can go in front of a relative pronoun to make them more formal. Consider this. There's a great cafe which you can buy expensive coffee in. But make it more formal by putting in before which. There's a great cafe in which you can buy expensive coffee. What is the adjective position when going with prepositions? Well, when verbs follow an adjective, we usually use to plus infinitive. For example, it is interesting to read about its history. I am proud to introduce our latest recruit. But in the structure adjective preposition verb, the verb takes the gerund form if we're not using to plus infinitive. For example, I'm sick of listening to your music. There are other reasons why we could omit the relative pronoun. We looked at omitting the relative pronoun before to be, but also in this case. When we use a relative pronoun followed by the subject, the relative pronoun can be omitted if the object of the relative clause is the same as the word that the clause defines. Consider these two examples. The cafe that Rachel likes to visit serves excellent drinks. Well, that refers to the cafe, so we can leave it out. The cafe Rachel likes to visit serves excellent drinks. So now we have the cafe, which is really described with that, and then Rachel is the subject of the relative clause. So in this case, we can leave that out. Often a verb is followed by a gerund or an infinitive. You can't follow it with both, but there are some verbs where you can, but the meaning changes. For example, I will go on speaking means continue speaking, but I will go on to speak means start to speak. So go on is the phrasal verb and it changes meaning depending upon whether it's followed by the gerund or 2 plus infinitive. And there are several verbs that do the same. For past necessity, use had to. I had to obey the rules. You cannot use must in this way. It needs to be had to. You could also use need to as well. For past negative necessity, use had to not. I had to not forget the rules. Now, the present simple can be used for future time simply by combining it with a word that indicates future time, such as in this. Let's find a cafe later today. So let us find a cafe, that's all in the present, but later today is a phrase that describes the future, add it to the present simple, and you've made future. Go and come have some similarities in the way that we can organise them in sentences. And they have some peculiarities that you need to know at an advanced level. After go and come, use the gerund if you are focusing purely on the activity of the verb. Let's all go running. So here the focus is on the activity running. But it's different in the next one. When the verb represents an activity constrained by time, use 2 plus infinitive after go or come. I've come to run in the marathon. So it's constrained by the marathon here. We've looked at present participle phrases, now we're looking at past participle phrases. Use past participle phrases to describe a noun, usually the subject, add extra information about a noun, reduce a passive form, or reduce a conditional if clause. Here's an example. Formed in warm waters, hurricanes start life as a small storm. So formed in warm waters is simply adding extra information about the noun hurricanes. But participle phrases don't always describe the subject. When the participle phrase represents the opinion of the speaker, then it doesn't have to describe the subject. So considering, that's the present participle, considering the evidence, no reason exists to dismiss the theory. This is simply the opinion of the speaker, and it does not describe no reason. Also, with it or there when they mean something exists. Speaking to John, there seems to be a problem at the zoo. Speaking to John does not describe there. There simply means something exists. When you're trying to be possessive with a noun, you've got two choices. Either noun of noun or apostrophe s. The cat's tail, the lid of the cup. Why would we use each one? Now, the rules are not clear-cut, but generally we follow this principle, which is possessive s usually indicates a closer relationship between the noun and the thing that owns it. Because a relationship is implied, then it's usually preferred for possession with people and animals. So the cat's tail, the tail belongs to the cat. There's more ownership by the cat of the tail. But the lid of the cup, well, the cup doesn't really own the lid. It may belong to the cup, but it doesn't own it. More distant relationship, noun of noun. And don't forget that we can use to be followed by to for plans. The guide was to show the guests the most beautiful parts of the town that evening. So was to really means this was the plan at the time. The plan at the time was the guide showing the guests.